everyone, Nalini Gulsaran here. I run a digital marketing company called Edge Space Marketing in Stamford, Connecticut. And today I'm coming to you as a SOW ambassador. And with me, I have a fellow friend, colleague. Our guest today is Chanda Glidden. She is a life coach, a lawyer, a mother. Let's call her a momtrepreneur. And we're going to talk today all about the dark side of leadership and entrepreneurship. They always say start a business. It's going to be great. You get the freedom, you get the time, you get what you need to do. But they don't tell you about all the hassle, the tired, the days that you don't want to keep going, the days you're not sure if you should keep going. So we're going to talk a little bit about how both of us went down that journey and what our paths were like and how we got to where we are today. So Chanda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me as your guest today. I am thrilled about this topic because I think enough of us don't talk about it, and especially normalizing when we are going through this. So this is a conversation very near and dear to my heart, having started multiple businesses. So I, as Nalini has put, I am a life coach. I'm a lawyer. I was career first a lawyer, and I've also become a life coach at some point in between there. So identity has been a really big part of my journey. Who am I? What am I giving to my clients? How do I combine all of these crazy things that I am doing within the network and the framework of who I want to be?
Thank you, Chanda. So one of the things we wanted to talk about first and foremost is this notion of, like you said, identity, who we are, who we used to be. I also come from a corporate background. So there is this transition that has to happen. And a lot of times we face imposter syndrome, trying to figure out who am I going to be? Who do I need to present as? Because that corporate identity and a small business identity and entrepreneurial identity, and in your case, lawyer, life coach, mom, they kind of conflict. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. To answer your question, how do I navigate that? It's not always been well. Some days I wake up completely confused. And just a little quick disclaimer here that this is not legal advice. This is not even business advice. This is just business life lessons and life experiences that we're sharing today, because I'm definitely not a business coach. And I think what was the hardest thing for me is like we're in this generation, I think, particularly you and I, we're in this generation that has come from our parents, looking at our parents, choosing a career, sitting in that career for decades. And when we come along and go, oh, this isn't for us. And, we're stuck in that millennial generation. As much as people want to talk about millennials, I'm an older millennial, almost Gen X, that, and I'm raising a Gen Z. And I've had like several identity crises, and that's tough when you want to know who you are and what you're doing and what you do makes a difference in this world. Then you have to sit there and go like, wait, what am I doing? Who am I today? And I think it's tougher for our generation, and sometimes even these newer Gen Z generations, that it's like you have to decide that it's okay to throw out everything you learned thus far, throw out that 4-year degree if it is not working for you. And I think some of us get kind of stuck in this, I should be doing this. I got this degree, I'm not using it. I wake up and at 40, I'm having a midlife crisis because this no longer fits the world I want to live in. And the world is changing. You look at these newer generations, they're more about lifestyle. They're more about enjoying life, where the generations we are coming from, it has been work, work, work. If you work hard, you will have a good life. And I think a lot of us are seeing that's not true. You can have you can have the money and still be unhappy, or you can have the happiness and not have the money and still be unhappy. So it's a whole combination. You have to figure it out. So what I have taken that leap after being a lawyer for several years, I found a place where I was like, I really want to try coaching, and the opportunity presented itself about 6 years ago, like 2016. So I've been doing this in and out of this space now for 6 years. So that's just to give you perspective on my journey, that it's been some days I'm like dedicated. I know I'm going to be a coach. I know who I am. And then next of all, I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm a lawyer. I need to go back to law. That was steady. That was secure. So you talked about imposter syndrome earlier. First of all, starting a whole new career, you're going to experience that. And that's something that a lot of us don't want to admit. We are going to wake up and feel like a fraud. We're going to feel like we don't know what we're doing. And the truth is, not a lot of people know what they're doing. Even in law, like being trained and having a lot of guidance, because I went through the British system, very different than the American system, where you're tested, you learn the information, then you kind of just pushed out into your own. We get a lot of pupillage, we get a lot of training, and then we're pushed out. And even with all of that guidance, my mentor told me, he's like, you're not going to feel comfortable in your career until you're about 5 years in it. And I went, oh, okay. And then 5th year, I remember sitting at my desk at one point and go, oh yes, I can do this. 5 years later, I'm doing it every single day. Yes, I can do this. And I'm starting to feel that way about coaching. So that was a completely new career, even though it was something I'm talented at naturally. I sat there and I'm like 6 years in now. So around last year or so, I was like, yeah, this isn't, I'm telling myself it's harder than it actually is. I am doing this. I'm true to myself now.
Right? And there's definitely this element of feeling like it should be hard, right? As you think about coming from that corporate background and that career progression, there's this notion of, well, if you're not challenging yourself, you're not progressing, you're not getting better. And especially in the space we're in. So this will be my 5th year. So I'm 1 year behind you. And it's definitely this, that you hit a stride. And I'm at a point where I'm like, you know what? I actually know what I'm doing. I get it now. And I'm not necessarily like thinking like I am always learning new skills, but it's not necessarily hard. It's challenging, it's rewarding, but it's not necessarily hard. And one of the things that, that make it really interesting when you first get started, that, when we talk about the notion of balancing ego against self-worth, is how do you get started? Like, I know for me, I ended up in this world because I lost my job 5 years ago, and I was applying for jobs. And then I started, a couple of people encouraged me and said, you know what, you've got a skill set. You should try this entrepreneurial life. And I'm like, I like corporate. It's a steady income. This is guaranteed. I don't have to worry about anything. And then, the job market was different even 5 years ago. And, it's funny when I look back, I had a 12-year corporate career that I was also moving around jobs within the one company. So now recruiters are looking at my resume going, you don't have 12 years of experience in any one thing, but I have all of these skills that help me today, right? From relationship management, project management, my IT skills, it kind of all came together for me. But then how do I get started? And so one of the hardest lessons, and, when new people start into their business world, I always tell them, sometimes you have to give it away, right? Like, we know what we're worth. We know what we charge today, but there's an element of earning your stripes, right? When I first started, I worked, and I still do. I still give away some of my services. I still work with nonprofits. I still volunteer, because it's how you build rapport with your community and the people around you. But it's also how you get that reputation of, yes, this person can do that. You and I know we can do it, but we need the audience at large to know that as well. And how to do that.
Yeah, it's building that credibility. And once you start to do that, you will negate some of that imposter syndrome. So I think that's a lot of things. It's like people feel like, oh, I'm worth X. And if you're not making X right away, and it could be different reasons why you're not making that. It could be, this is what the market is. The market's not there just yet. Like when I started off, nobody knew what a life coach was. I live in the Cayman Islands. They're like, what is this? They're used to me being a lawyer. They know what that is. But this undefined career choice, they're like, but what is that? I don't trust that. I don't know how that might help me. So I had to do a lot of just being out there and talking to people and educating people about what I did. So that was not times I was necessarily making money. And I'm like, so I think we'll have to talk about cash flow in a minute, but it's because that's definitely the darkest side. But just in general, like, you have to spend that time to let people get to know you. It's not just about, and you'll know this as a marketer, it's not just about putting an ad out there. Like I was doing a lot of just posting graphics and this is my services, etc. But it's building that trust and building that relationship with people. And if you're too scared of yourself, and it is scary, I think that's the point behind today's conversation, is it's so scary to put yourself as the face of your business. It's easy to hide behind the name, the branding, the cute little graphics and whatnot. But when you have to get out there and tell people, this is who I am, this is what I do, then it starts to be a little bit more confrontational. So you have to trust yourself and just give yourself a lot of space to just develop that. I mean, I went from, like I said, hiding behind the branding to having to get out there, because I was like, why isn't this working? Every day I'm like, okay, people say I'm great. The clients that I do have adore me. They think I've changed their lives, but not enough people know this. So I started doing these little videos on Instagram. And after, like, it started off as 3. I was going to do a series of 3, get my face out there, talk about the struggle and whatnot. And then 3 turned into like 20. It was 1 a week, turned into 27 weeks later, and turned into me sitting at the bar, and somebody says, oh, you're a life coach, right? oh, okay, I've seen your stuff. Or going out to some event and people are pulling me aside and say, hey, I just want to let you know that I follow your stuff. I love your stuff. So I had to really create my own identity, and I couldn't be afraid of doing that anymore. I'm an introvert, just for people who don't know. Everybody thinks like, no way, introverts are shy. No, it's just about becoming confident and comfortable with who you are.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that. One of my favorite moments in terms of that pivotal moment when you kind of transition and tell people this is who I am. When I first left corporate and I'm looking for a job and I am traveling at the same time, I'm starting this company, I'm in the inception phases, and my flight gets delayed. I'm sitting in the airport bar and the person next to me, his wife's on some flight that's delayed. And he's like, what do you do? And my first thought is, well, I'm a project manager. I'm like, well, no, not really. I'm like, I'm in the market. Well, actually, no. I'm like, you know what? Let's test drive this. I'm like, I run a digital marketing agency. And he goes, tell me more. And I'm like, wait, he wants to know more? I've had at this point 0 paid clients. I had just built the website, but I had several clients that I had been volunteering with, so I could tell real life stories. And the irony is that situation never panned out, but it was, you meet a stranger, they ask you what you do, and you tell them, and they want to know more. And you're suddenly going, oh, okay. So the point of that is like the relationships that we build. Like when I first started and people say you have to network, you have to get out there. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Yeah. And then I didn't want to go alone. You imagine going to a networking event with complete strangers by yourself. I'm an extrovert and I still don't like, now I can go by myself, but still have moments where I'm like, who am I going to know there? Am I going to know anyone? And sometimes if you do know someone, you get stuck with that someone and you don't actually go meet anyone. So I had to start making rules, right? I had to make rules for myself. You've got to, when we get to cash flow, this will be important. Set a $20 budget for coffees every month because you need to have those one-on-one conversations. Zooms makes that easier now. But 5 years ago, we weren't doing Zooms. We were sitting in the coffee shop or the library or somewhere. Then it was meet 3 people. If I do nothing, not just give them a card, take their business card. Do I know them? Do I know their name? Do I know their business? Do I know some personal detail, whether they're from the area, how long they've started their business? I started like a little question bank, those question banks. Cool.
Yeah.
I'd start to make those rules. And so when I had friends that came up on the journey with me and, we're going to networking events, I'd be like, okay, listen, not that I don't love you and not that I don't want to be with you, but when we get there, we've got to go like this. We can't go together because if we go together, it just, you get comfortable and then you don't make that relationship, that connection you need to make. So
absolutely. And you're going to do a whole presentation on just networking, aren't you? So like,
yeah, we're going to work on that one. Yeah. And it's like that whole notion of get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I saw a comment come through in the chat just now that was something like the dark side is okay. You've got to get real comfortable being uncomfortable because a lot of that's going to happen.
Exactly. And you start having to look at what is working and what is like, it's a constant, this works, that works, and just keeping that checklist. So if I go to, if I'm dealing with a client and they like this, or this checklist works, or this inboarding, like it's systems and operations, and no one tells you that, like the support, the things you put into place, that is essential, and knowing what is going to work for you and build you up and knowing what doesn't, and being very honest.
Yeah. Not just the what, the who. Right. And the most important part of this journey is you're not alone on it. There are other entrepreneurs. There are other whether you're in entrepreneurial space or a leadership space, right? You need to figure out who your support systems are. There are days where I call Chanda and I'm like, I just need you to listen. I'm on to whine and cry for the next 10, 15 minutes. Get it out of your system. But then once we're done clearing the emotion, it's like, okay, what are we doing about it now? Coming up with the strategy, because while you have to process your emotions, you then have to actually figure out how to solve for whatever caused the grief or whatever the emotional strain you're going through.
Okay, well, here's my darkest moment. I was sitting in my room one day. The cash flow was not there. And I mean, sometimes you are alone. Sometimes you have moments where you are alone. Ultimately, you're not, but there are moments. And I sat there and things were really, really bad. And I had to make this little checklist of like, did I eat today? Yes. Like, do I have food? Do I have shelter? Do I have, my car hasn't been repossessed? Like whatever those lists of, I survived today. I had to create that for myself. And I remember just sitting there and it was like some random Tuesday in the middle of the day. And I'm like, okay. And I just fell into tears and I was just like, why am I doing this? Do I need to do this anymore? And I have seen people come and go on this journey with me. And I'm like, maybe they have the right idea. Maybe I just need to quit this and go get a job. And, this isn't working out. And I sat there and I was just in my room bawling, and I heard this like deep sensation come out of me. It was deep down. It was just like, no. You do not get to give up. You don't get to go out like a punk. You don't get to do this. And that was coming from me. So it would be understandable if I was like, no, you know what? This doesn't work. But my whole core, my whole body was telling me, you're giving up. So it that leads me to like the days that there are struggling. Some days it is. And for entrepreneurs, the hardest thing is seeing that cash flow can be unpredictable. So it takes a lot of planning. And how do we, go through that? Sometimes, I've had jobs on the side, and I think, that's something we might want to talk about just quickly, is that it is okay to get a job. You have bills to pay. And while you're building this business, and, there's different schools of thought of just focus on this and only focus on this until it's successful. But that's not always practical for everybody. So.
Right, exactly. When I first started within that first 6 months of starting the business, I had zero income. I'm trying to figure out how to start this business. I'm applying for jobs at the same time. I was temping for an interior designer. And I mean, when I say temping, I mean packing boxes and putting things on a shelf, not even anything using my skill set, and recognizing that this is a means to an end. And I purposely went that route because I could have gotten a job that paid more, but I didn't want one that would take all my creative energy and mental capacity so that I couldn't do what I needed to do to grow and run the business. And for me, my darkest moment was I think I was in month 7 of starting the business. I had maybe one client in the digital marketing world. For those of you who are marketers, doesn't pay the bills. It's not a big corporation. It was a small business, and I love her, but it wasn't enough. And I had to ask myself, okay, you're 7 months in. Your cash flow is starting to kind of dwindle down. You need to make a decision. Are you going back to corporate? Are you running this business? Pick one. And I realized I didn't want to go back to corporate. I really was enjoying what I was doing. I really wanted to do this. And I committed to it wholeheartedly. And within the next month, 7 clients went into contract. All the people that were in the pipeline that were coming. And it's that notion of don't get discouraged. You have to have your plan B. But trust your process, trust yourself, trust your worth, and just, persevere. But also know that you need to sometimes have that moment of, you know what, maybe I need a part-time job. Maybe I need to do something else because the bills are there waiting for us no matter what. I remember like the funniest moment for me was my dad would call me and say, how you doing? You doing great? He's like, you made the mortgage? Absolutely. Didn't make the light bill.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like at the end of the day, it's not just even how badly do you want this, but are you willing to be patient with yourself? Are you really willing to give this up for the alternative of what it can be? So, and I think at this point, even though things might not still be where I want them to go, it's a process. It is an evolution. You will grow, you will change, your niche will change, things will change, and you have to be willing to accept that. But I wouldn't trade it. I have had so many amazing experiences because of the journeys I've decided to take. I've had opportunities that I would never, ever have had if I stayed in a corporate traditional career path. So for me, it's the experiences are the blessing.
Absolutely. And it's funny, it's going back to my dad. One of the things he also said to me was that I had a 12-year corporate career. I'm doing this 1 year later. He goes, you may not be making the money you used to make, but you are the happiest I've ever heard you in a long time. That satisfaction. So persevere, know that you're going to be super satisfied, but know you're going to have those moments like, we're in we've already started Q2. I can't even figure that out. Since the beginning of the year, I've been averaging about 12 to 16-hour days, knowing that I need to grow the team, knowing we have, hiring challenges across the globe, but I still love what I do. I still wake up every day energized that this is what I want to do, thinking about how I get to change lives every day. And knowing that these small businesses that I'm helping become successful, those are moms and dads that are able to take care of their kids. They are putting back into the community. And for me, everything I do is community-based, right? I could go get a big company. I don't want that. I want all the small companies, knowing that these small companies all make a stronger community for us to live in.
Yep. So my final thought, do not give up on yourself. Give yourself a lot of space, grace, and patience, and love.
Yes. Thank you, Chanda. Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out with us. What a great talk. And we look forward to seeing you all at SOW Victory Fest in the next couple of weeks.